Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Storm. Terrence had built his life like a fortress, methodical, calculated, impenetrable. At 35, he owned a chain of high-end security consulting firms that protected the wealthy elite of San Francisco. His reputation for discretion and ruthless efficiency had made him indispensable to people who valued their secrets above their lives. The irony wasn't lost on him that the man who protected others' secrets would soon discover the devastating ones hidden in his own home. Terrence's marriage to Danielle Golden had been a strategic alliance that blossomed into genuine love, or so he believed. She came from old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted, and her father, Randall Golden, owned half the shipping lanes on the West Coast. Their daughter, Emma, now 8 years old, was the light of Terrence's world, a precocious child with her mother's beauty and his analytical mind. The family cruise had been Randall's idea, a celebration of Golden Shipping's 50th anniversary. The luxurious 200-foot yacht carried only family and close associates, floating through the pristine waters off the California coast. Terrence had noticed the subtle changes in Danielle's behavior over the past months. The distant looks, the carefully guarded phone, the sudden interest in yoga classes that seemed to run longer each week. But tonight, as he watched her from the upper deck, everything clicked into place with the precision of a sniper's scope. Danielle stood at the stern, silhouetted against the moonlight, embracing a man Terrence recognized immediately. Zachary Winters, Randall's head of operations, and the golden boy of Golden Shipping. The embrace wasn't familial. The kiss that followed wasn't friendly. And the words Terrence overheard through the night breeze cut deeper than any blade. "After this weekend, we'll be free," Zachary whispered. "Your father's plan will work perfectly." "Emma's such a burden anyway," Danielle replied, her voice carrying a coldness Terrence had never heard before. "She looks too much like him. It'll be easier this way." Terrence's blood turned to ice. Whatever plan they were discussing involved his daughter, and from the tone, it wasn't meant to end well for either of them. He retreated to his cabin, his mind racing through possibilities. In his line of work, he'd learned to think 10 steps ahead of his enemies. He'd just never imagined his enemies would be sleeping in his bed. That night, Terrence lay awake listening to Danielle's breathing beside him, every rise and fall a betrayal. He thought about Emma sleeping in the adjoining cabin, innocent and trusting, unaware that the people she loved most were plotting against her. The protective instinct that had made him successful in his business now focused on his daughter with laser intensity. By dawn, Terrence had made his decision. He would not wait for their plan to unfold. He would force their hand, make them reveal themselves, and then he would destroy them all. Chapter 2. Blood in the Water. The second day of the cruise dawned with deceptive calm. Terrence moved through the morning routines with practiced normalcy. Breakfast with Emma, casual conversation with the other guests, polite interactions with Randall and his crew. But beneath the surface, he was a predator circling his prey. Terrence's security background had taught him that the best intelligence came from letting people think they were unobserved. He'd spent the morning discreetly planting micro-recording devices throughout the yacht, gifts from his own company's surveillance division. Every conversation would now be captured, every whispered plan documented. The devices paid off faster than he'd anticipated. At lunch, while Emma played with her cousins, Terrence listened through his encrypted earpiece as Randall met with Zachary in the ship's office. What he heard shattered any remaining illusions about the Golden family's true nature. "The insurance alone will set us up for life," Randall's gravelly voice crackled through the feed. "Tragic accident. Father and daughter lost at sea. Danielle inherits everything as the grieving widow. Then we restructure the company with Zachary as the new CEO." "What about the investigation?" Zachary asked. "Terrence has too many enemies in his line of work. Could be any number of people who wanted him dead. The authorities will chase ghosts while we count money. And Emma, collateral damage. She's Terrence's daughter, not mine. Never like how he tried to turn her against traditional family values anyway, filling her head with ideas about being independent. Terrence's hands clenched into fists. The casual way they discussed murdering his daughter, their own flesh and blood, revealed a level of evil he'd only encountered in his darkest professional cases. But it was Danielle's voice that truly broke something inside him. "I never wanted children anyway," she said, her tone as flat as if discussing the weather. "Zachary and I talked about this. We want to travel, live freely. Emma's just an inconvenience we inherited from my mistake with Terrence." "Your father's right about one thing," Zachary added. "She's got too much of him in her. Too smart, too observant. She'd figure things out eventually." The recording captured the sound of glasses clinking, a toast to their daughter's murder. Terrence removed his earpiece and looked across the deck at Emma, who was laughing as she played tag with her cousins. The innocence in her eyes, the complete trust she had in the adults around her, strengthened his resolve. These people had mistaken his love for weakness, his civility for vulnerability. They were about to learn the difference between a protective father and a predator unleashed. That afternoon, Terrence began implementing his own plan. He sent encrypted messages to his most trusted associates, men who understood that loyalty was rewarded and betrayal was punished without mercy. By evening, pieces would be in motion that would ensure his family's enemies faced consequences they couldn't imagine. But first, he needed them to make their move. He needed them to reveal themselves completely, to commit fully to their betrayal, so that when justice came, it would be absolute and undeniable. As the sun began to set on the second day, Terrence watched his wife prepare for what she thought would be his final evening alive. She had no idea she was actually preparing for her own downfall. Chapter 3: The Abyss Gazes Back. The third evening arrived with gathering storm clouds that seemed to mirror the darkness building in Terrence's heart. He had spent the day playing the role of the oblivious husband and father, while his hidden recordings captured every detail of the conspiracy against him and Emma. The most damning revelation had come during Danielle's afternoon conversation with her sister Caroline, who was also aboard the yacht with her husband Brooks. "Are you really going through with this?" Caroline had asked, her voice trembling. "It's the only way," Danielle replied coldly. "Terrence will never agree to a divorce, and his prenup protects all his assets. This way, I inherit everything, and Zachary gets control of Dad's company. It's perfect, but Emma's just a child. She's his child, not mine. I pretended to love her for 8 years, Caroline. 8 years of playing mother to a girl who looks at me like she can see right through me. She's too much like him, calculating, always watching. She'd expose us eventually." What Terrence found most chilling wasn't just the planned murder, but the complete absence of maternal instinct. Danielle spoke about Emma, like she was discussing the disposal of unwanted furniture. The recording also revealed that this wasn't a sudden decision. They'd been planning this for over a year, carefully choosing the perfect moment when they'd all be isolated at sea, far from immediate help. As evening fell, Terrence's associates had confirmed receipt of his instructions. Miles away, other wheels were already turning. But tonight, on this yacht, surrounded by his enemies, Terrence would play his most dangerous game yet. The family gathered for what Randall announced would be a special evening celebration. The champagne flowed freely, and Emma delighted in being allowed to stay up late with the adults. Terrence watched his daughter with fierce protectiveness, memorizing every laugh, every gesture, knowing that after tonight, everything would change forever. Around 10 o'clock, as the yacht sailed through increasingly choppy waters, Randall stood and raised his glass. To family, he declared, his eyes meeting Terrence's with what looked like triumph. To bonds that can never be broken. The toast was their signal. Terrence could see it in their eyes. Danielle's forced smile, Zachary's nervous energy, Randall's predatory satisfaction. They thought they were looking at a dead man. "Actually," Terrence said, standing slowly, "I have something to say first." He pulled out a small device, a signal transmitter that would broadcast to his security team. But more importantly, it would also transmit the recordings he'd gathered to a secure server, ensuring evidence of their conspiracy would survive whatever happened next. "I know," he said simply. The words hung in the air like a sword. Danielle's face went pale. Zachary took a step backward, and Randall's expression shifted from triumph to calculation. "Know what?" Randall asked, but his hand was already moving toward the inside of his jacket. "I know about the insurance policies. I know about the planned accident. I know you've been planning to murder me and my daughter." Emma looked up from her game, confusion clouding her young face. "Daddy? What's happening?" Before anyone could respond, Randall's mask finally slipped completely. His face contorted with rage as he lunged forward, grabbing Emma roughly by the arm. "You think you're so smart?" he snarled. "You think your little security business makes you untouchable? A child from you doesn't belong in this family." With shocking brutality, he lifted the screaming 8-year-old and hurled her over the yacht's railing into the dark, churning waters below. The splash seemed to echo in slow motion as Terrence's world exploded into action. Without hesitation, he vaulted over the railing after his daughter, hitting the cold Pacific with the determination of a man who would either save his child or die trying. Behind him on the yacht, he could hear Danielle's voice, cold and final. "Dad is right. She's worthless." Those words, spoken about their own daughter as she struggled in the deadly waters, sealed every fate that would follow. In that moment, as Terrence fought the waves to reach Emma, something fundamental died inside him. Something that had once believed in mercy, in forgiveness, in second chances. They had no idea what he would do next, but they would learn, and the lesson would be written in blood and betrayal, reaching far beyond this yacht, touching lives they'd never considered, and awakening a darkness in Terrence that would remake their entire world. As he pulled Emma's shivering form against him in the black water, Terrence made a silent promise. They had shown him their true nature. Now he would show them his. Chapter 4. Resurrection and Reckoning. Terrence and Emma spent 14 hours in the Pacific, clinging to a life preserver that Terrence had managed to grab during his desperate dive. The yacht had disappeared into the night, leaving them to die as planned. But what the Golden family didn't know was that Terrence's security training included survival tactics that went far beyond their imagination. As dawn broke, a Coast Guard helicopter appeared on the horizon. Terrence's emergency beacon, a device he always carried, known only to his most trusted associate Marcel Glover, had been transmitting their location all night. The rescue was swift and professional, but more importantly, it was documented. "Thank God you're alive," the Coast Guard captain said as they were pulled aboard. "When we got the report that you'd both been lost overboard, we feared the worst." "Report?" Terrence asked, though he already knew the answer. "Your family filed it this morning. Said you'd both fallen overboard during the storm, and they couldn't find you in the dark." Emma, wrapped in emergency blankets and still shaking from trauma and hypothermia, looked up at her father with eyes that had aged years in a single night. "Daddy, why did Grandpa do that? Why did Mommy say I was worthless?" Terrence held his daughter close, feeling the fire of vengeance burning away any remaining doubt. "Because they're not our family anymore, sweetheart. But don't worry, Daddy's going to fix this." The Coast Guard delivered them to San Francisco General Hospital, where Terrence's associates were already waiting. Marcel Glover, a mountain of a man who'd served with Terrence in military intelligence before joining his security firm, approached with the grim efficiency of a battlefield medic. "Boss, we've got problems and solutions," Marcel said quietly as Emma was taken for medical evaluation. "The problems: they filed life insurance claims this morning. Started moving assets before your bodies were even supposed to be found. Zachary's already been named interim CEO of Golden Shipping. And the solutions?" Marcel's smile was razor sharp. "The recordings you transmitted were received and backed up. We've got everything. But more importantly, Randall Golden has no idea who he just made an enemy of." While Emma slept under medical supervision, Terrence learned the full scope of his family's betrayal. Not only had they planned his murder, but they'd been systematically looting his companies for months, transferring assets to offshore accounts controlled by shell companies linked to Zachary. But their biggest mistake had been underestimating who Terrence really was. "Marcel, it's time they learned what we do to people who hurt children," Terrence said, his voice carrying the cold finality of a death sentence. "Which protocol, boss?" "All of them. That afternoon, while Danielle played the grieving widow for the media and Randall celebrated with champagne in his penthouse office, Terrence began implementing a plan that would make their nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. His first call was to Jeremiah Alexander, a former CIA operative who now handled Terrence's most sensitive overseas operations. The second was to Dwight Moreno, whose specialty was making people disappear without a trace. The third was to Hannah Schaefer, a former federal prosecutor who discovered that justice sometimes required operating outside the law. Each of them owed Terrence their lives, and each of them understood that some sins demanded punishment beyond what any court could deliver. "They think they killed us," Terrence told his assembled team that evening in a secure facility outside the city. Emma was safely hidden in a private medical facility under assumed names, guarded by operators who would die before letting harm come to her. "They think they're celebrating their victory. They think they're safe. They think wrong." The room filled with the kind of silence that preceded violence. These weren't ordinary security consultants. They were Terrence's inner circle, men and women who'd followed him from the darkest corners of military intelligence into the private sector. They were professionals who understood that some enemies couldn't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or reformed. They could only be destroyed. "I want them to understand what they've done," Terrence continued. "I want them to experience every moment of fear my daughter felt when she hit that water. I want them to feel helpless, betrayed, and abandoned. And when they're broken completely, when they beg for mercy they'll never receive, I want them to know it was because they tried to murder a child." Marcel cracked his knuckles. "Where do we start, boss?" Terrence pulled up a holographic display showing the Golden family's entire network. Shipping routes, financial holdings, family members, associates, weaknesses. It was a web of connections they'd built over decades, and Terrence was about to turn each strand into a noose. "We start by making them vulnerable," he said. "Then we make them suffer. Then we make them disappear." Chapter 5. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. 3 days after their deaths, Terrence's revenge machine began operating with the precision of a Swiss watch. The first phase was psychological warfare designed to make his enemies paranoid and sloppy. Zachary Winters was the first to crack. On Monday morning, he arrived at Golden Shipping's headquarters to find his office stripped bare. Security claimed they had video footage of Zachary himself authorizing the removal of all furniture and personal items, though Zachary had no memory of such authorization. His access cards had been deactivated, his parking space reassigned, and his company credit cards declined. When he demanded answers from Randall, he found the old man in a similar state of confusion. Strange packages had been delivered to Randall's home. Packages containing surveillance photos of his most private moments, recordings of conversations he thought were secret, and detailed financial records of accounts he'd thought were hidden. "Someone's playing games with us," Zachary said, pacing Randall's office like a caged animal. "This has to be connected to Terrence somehow." "Terrence is dead," Randall growled, but his voice lacked conviction. "We watched him go over the side. Then who the hell is doing this?" Neither man noticed the micro-drone hovering outside the 60th-floor window, recording their every word for Terrence's analysis. Meanwhile, Danielle was experiencing her own psychological torment. She'd awakened that morning to find all of Terrence's belongings exactly as he'd left them. Clothes laid out for a day he'd never see, coffee mug still containing his last cup, his computer displaying family photos she thought she'd deleted. When she demanded to know who'd been in her house, the security company claimed she'd authorized the restoration herself. But the most unsettling development was Emma's room. Danielle had planned to pack away her daughter's belongings immediately, wanting to erase all traces of the child she'd helped murder. Instead, she found a room exactly as Emma had left it, down to homework assignments spread on the desk and a half-finished drawing of their family. The drawing showed Terrence and Emma holding hands on a beach, smiling in the sun. Danielle wasn't in the picture at all. That night, Danielle called Zachary in a panic. "Something's wrong. I keep hearing Emma's voice in the house. I swear I saw her reflection in the bathroom mirror, but when I turned around, nothing was there." "You're imagining things," Zachary replied, but his own voice was shaky. Guilt can make you see things that aren't there. I don't feel guilty, Danielle snapped. I feel like I'm being watched. She was right. From a van parked 3 blocks away, Jeremiah Alexander monitored every room in her house through cameras so small they were invisible to the naked eye. Every movement, every conversation, every moment of growing paranoia was being recorded and analyzed. She's breaking faster than expected, Jeremiah reported to Terrence. Another few days of this, and she'll be ready for phase 2. Terrence watched the surveillance feeds with cold satisfaction. Emma was healing in the secure facility, working with trauma specialists who were helping her process what had happened. She was stronger than her mother in every way that mattered, and she was alive. That was all that mattered to him now. What about Randall? Terrence asked. He's the toughest nut, but we're making progress. Hannah's people have been visiting his business partners, asking questions about Golden Shipping's insurance policies and recent changes in leadership. Half his board is already talking about calling an emergency meeting. And Zachary? Marcel's grin was predatory. Zachary's about to have a very bad day. Turns out his mother, Vicky Winters, has some interesting secrets. Secrets that could destroy more than just his career if they came to light. Terrence felt a moment of satisfaction. In his previous life, he believed in justice through legal channels, in building cases and following procedures. But his enemies had taught him that some crimes required more direct justice. They'd murdered his child, or tried to. They'd shown him that mercy was weakness, that forgiveness was foolishness. Now he would show them what real power looked like when it was wielded without restraint. Phase 2 begins tomorrow, Terrence announced. It's time to start taking things away from them. Everything they value, everything they think makes them safe. By the time we're done, they'll beg for the mercy they never showed Emma. And if they try to run? Marcel asked. Terrence's smile was arctic. Where can they go that we can't follow? We're not bound by jurisdictions or legal procedures anymore. We're not playing by their rules. What rules are we playing by? Simple, Terrence replied, watching Danielle pace her living room like a caged animal. They chose to become monsters. Now they get to learn what real monsters look like. Chapter 6. The Walls Close In. The second phase of Terrence's campaign began with surgical precision. While his enemies struggled with psychological pressure, he began systematically dismantling their lives piece by piece. Zachary discovered the extent of his vulnerability when he arrived home to find his mother, Vicky, sitting in his living room, tears streaming down her face, clutching a manila envelope. "What happened?" he asked, but the look in her eyes already told him everything he needed to know. "They know," she whispered. "About Nevada. About what happened 20 years ago." Zachary's blood turned to ice. The Nevada incident was supposed to be buried forever. A hit-and-run accident that had killed a family of 4 while Vicky was driving drunk. Zachary had been 17, and his mother had used the Golden family's influence to cover it up, framing a homeless man who died in police custody before he could defend himself. "How is that possible?" Zachary demanded, snatching the envelope. Inside were police photos from the original accident scene, evidence that had supposedly been destroyed decades ago, and detailed financial records showing how the cover-up had been orchestrated. "There's more," Vicky said, her voice breaking. "They have everything. Video footage from the gas station where I stopped after the accident, showing me washing blood off the car. Banking records of the payments we made to the police chief. Even audio recordings of phone calls we made that night. The envelope also contained a single photograph. Emma's school picture with a note written in a child's handwriting. Some secrets don't stay buried forever." Zachary felt the world tilting around him. Whoever was doing this wasn't just targeting him. They were targeting everyone he cared about, forcing him to choose between protecting himself and protecting his mother. Meanwhile, Randall Golden was discovering that his empire was built on far shakier ground than he'd imagined. His shipping contracts were being mysteriously canceled, with clients claiming they'd received evidence of safety violations and environmental crimes. His bank accounts were frozen, pending investigations into money laundering allegations. His insurance policies were being reviewed for fraud. But the most devastating blow came when his daughter Caroline called in a panic. "Dad, they took Brooks," she sobbed into the phone. Men in suits showed up at his office with federal badges. They said he's being charged with human trafficking. That's impossible, Randall snarled. Brooks doesn't have anything to do with that side of the business. The silence on the line was deafening. Caroline's voice, when it came, was small and terrified. What side of the business, Dad? Randall realized his mistake too late. His son-in-law, Brooks, had never known about the Golden family's darker enterprises, the cargo containers that carried more than legitimate goods, the shipping routes that moved people who didn't want to be found. It was a secret Randall had guarded for decades, and now it was being used to destroy his family from within. Listen to me carefully, a calm voice said on Caroline's line. Randall realized someone else had been listening to their conversation. Brooks will be released when you're ready to discuss terms. Who is this? Randall demanded. Someone who cares about children, the voice replied. Unlike you. The line went dead, leaving Randall staring at his phone in fury and growing fear. Danielle's psychological breakdown accelerated when she arrived home to find a social worker waiting in her driveway. Mrs. Ware? I'm Terry Roach from Child Protective Services. We've received some concerning reports about your household's safety standards. That's impossible, Danielle said, her voice rising. There are no children here anymore. Terry's expression grew cold. No children? According to our records, you have an 8-year-old daughter named Emma. We have reports that she hasn't been seen for several days, and her school is asking questions. Danielle's mind raced. In her eagerness to erase Emma from her life, she'd forgotten that the outside world still expected a living child to exist. Teachers, neighbors, family friends, they would all eventually ask questions about Emma's absence. She's with relatives, Danielle stammered. Which relatives? We'll need to verify her safety immediately. As Terry pulled out an official form, Danielle realized she was trapped. She couldn't produce a living child who was supposedly dead, but she couldn't explain Emma's absence without admitting to murder. I need to make some phone calls, she said weakly. Of course. We'll wait. But there was nowhere to call, no one who could help her explain away a murdered child. For the first time since this nightmare began, Danielle understood that she might have made a mistake she couldn't escape. That evening, the three conspirators met in Randall's office, their earlier confidence replaced by growing desperation. This is Terrence, Zachary said, his hands shaking as he poured himself a drink. Somehow, he survived, and now he's coming for us. Terrence is dead, Randall insisted. We saw him go into the water. Then explain this, Danielle snapped, throwing down photos that had been left on her doorstep. The images showed all three of them on the yacht, captured from angles that revealed their conspiracy in perfect detail. Explain how a dead man took these pictures. Randall studied the photos, his face growing pale. These weren't taken from a yacht. Someone was watching us from another vessel. Or from the water, Zachary said quietly. What if Terrence didn't go in to save Emma? What if he knew what we were planning and was already prepared? The possibility hung in the air like a death sentence. If Terrence had anticipated their betrayal, if he'd been planning his own countermove while they thought they were in control, then they weren't dealing with a grieving father seeking justice. They were dealing with a predator who had been hunting them from the beginning. What do we do? Danielle asked, and for the first time since the yacht, her voice carried genuine fear. Before anyone could answer, all of their phones chimed simultaneously with incoming messages. Each message contained the same image, Emma's drawing of her and her father on the beach, with new text added in red ink. She's alive. You failed. Now you pay. Chapter 7. The Devil's Due. The revelation that Emma was alive sent shockwaves through the conspiracy that shattered their remaining composure. What had been a carefully planned murder was now exposed as an attempted child killing, and the legal ramifications alone could destroy them. But Terrence wasn't interested in legal justice anymore. Zachary cracked first. The pressure of knowing his mother could be destroyed by the Nevada evidence, combined with the growing certainty that Terrence was orchestrating an elaborate revenge scheme, drove him to desperation. He made the fatal mistake of trying to run. Marcel's team intercepted him at San Francisco International Airport, where Zachary had purchased a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country using a fake passport. The confrontation was swift and professional. "Zachary Winters," Marcel said, approaching him at the gate with the casual confidence of a predator cornering wounded prey. "Mr. Ware would like a word." "I don't know any Mr. Ware," Zachary replied, but his voice cracked with terror. "Funny thing about that," Marcel continued, producing a tablet that showed surveillance footage of Zachary throwing Emma overboard. "The Coast Guard has been very interested in this video. Amazing what technology can capture these days." Zachary's legs gave out, and he collapsed into a chair. What does he want? Truth, justice, and payment for what you did to his daughter. When Zachary was brought to Terrence's secure facility, he found himself face-to-face with a man he barely recognized. The Terrence he'd known had been civilized, controlled, almost diplomatic in his business dealings. This Terrence was something else entirely, a creature carved from ice and fury, with eyes that held no warmth, no mercy, no humanity. "You threw my 8-year-old daughter into the ocean," Terrence said without preamble. "You helped plan our murders. You conspired to steal everything I'd built. But worst of all, you made Emma afraid." "I'm sorry," Zachary babbled. "It was Randall's idea. Danielle was the one who—" "I don't want apologies," Terrence interrupted. "I want you to understand what comes next." He gestured to a wall of monitors showing surveillance feeds from various locations. Zachary recognized his mother's house, Randall's office, Danielle's home, and dozens of other places connected to their conspiracy. "Your mother's case is already being reopened. The evidence of her hit and run will be released to the media tomorrow morning. Her nursing license will be revoked, her assets frozen, and she'll spend the rest of her life in prison." "Please," Zachary begged. "She's an old woman. She's suffered enough. Did you think Emma was too young to suffer when you threw her into the Pacific?" Terrence asked, "But I'm not unreasonable. I'll give you a choice." A door opened, and Emma walked in, healthy and whole, but changed by her ordeal. She looked at Zachary with the kind of clear-eyed assessment that belonged on an adult's face, not a child's. "Hello, Mr. Winters," she said calmly. "You tried to kill me." Zachary couldn't meet her gaze. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I never wanted—" "Yes, you did," Emma interrupted. "I heard you planning it. You said I was too smart, too observant. You were right about that." Terrence placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Emma deserves to see justice for what you did to her. So here's your choice, Zachary. You can confess everything. The murder attempt, the financial fraud, Randall's human trafficking operation, and your mother will be allowed to serve her sentence in minimum security. Or you can stay silent, and she'll face maximum charges for the Nevada killings plus conspiracy to commit murder." "What about me?" Zachary asked. "You?" Terrence smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Zachary had ever seen. "You don't get choices anymore. You lost that right when you touched my daughter." The confession session lasted 6 hours. Zachary revealed everything. The months of planning, the financial schemes, the insurance fraud, and most damaging of all, the details of Randall Golden's criminal enterprise that stretched far beyond simple shipping. By the time he was finished, Terrence had enough evidence to destroy not just the immediate conspirators, but their entire network of corruption. Meanwhile, Danielle was discovering that her world was collapsing from within. The social worker's investigation had triggered a cascade of legal problems. The life insurance companies were launching fraud investigations. Her father's associates were distancing themselves from the Golden family. And most terrifyingly, people were asking questions about Emma that she couldn't answer. When Randall finally realized the scope of what they were facing, he made his own desperate play. He contacted his most dangerous associates, men who solved problems through violence, who understood that sometimes witnesses needed to disappear permanently. But Terrence had anticipated this move. When Randall's hired killers arrived at the secure facility, they found themselves outnumbered, outgunned, and facing opponents who'd spent years fighting in places where rules didn't exist. "Send them back to Randall with a message," Terrence told Marcel as they zip-tied the surviving attackers. "Tell him that he's escalated this to a level he can't handle. Tell him that if he wants a war, he'll get one. But it won't be the kind of war he's prepared for." As night fell over San Francisco, Terrence looked out at the city lights and felt the cold satisfaction of a plan coming together. His enemies had revealed themselves completely, committed crimes they couldn't take back, and shown their true nature to the world. Now came the final phase, the phase where they would learn that some sins couldn't be forgiven, some debts couldn't be paid, and some enemies couldn't be escaped. Emma appeared beside him, looking older than her 8 years. "Daddy, are you going to kill them?" Terrence considered the question seriously. "What do you think should happen to people who try to hurt children?" "I think," Emma said carefully, "that they should never be able to hurt anyone ever again." "Then that's what we'll make sure happens," Terrence replied. "One way or another." Chapter 8, Blood and Ashes. The final confrontation began at dawn when federal agents, armed with evidence provided by Terrence's confession sessions, simultaneously raided Golden shipping headquarters, Randall's mansion, and Danielle's home. But by then, the legal system was just catching up to justice that had already been served. Randall Golden was found in his office, surrounded by the wreckage of his empire. Every shipping contract had been canceled, every bank account frozen, every illegal operation exposed. His criminal associates had either fled the country or been arrested in coordinated raids. His own security team had abandoned him, leaving him alone in a building that would soon be seized by federal marshals. But Terrence wasn't interested in letting the law have the final word. "Hello, Randall," Terrence said, walking into the office with Emma at his side. "I thought you might want to see what survival looks like." Randall's face went through a range of emotions: shock, disbelief, rage, and finally fear as he understood that his carefully planned murder had failed completely. "This is impossible," he whispered. "You went into the water. We saw you both go under. You saw what you expected to see," Terrence replied. "A desperate father trying to save his daughter. You never considered that I might have been expecting your betrayal, that I might have been prepared for your attack." Emma stepped forward, her young face carrying an expression of mature judgment that would have been heartbreaking under different circumstances. "Grandpa, why did you throw me in the ocean?" Randall couldn't meet her eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, you don't understand. Business requires difficult decisions sometimes. I understand that you tried to kill me because I looked too much like Daddy," Emma replied. "I understand that you thought I was worthless. I understand that you never loved me at all." The simple truth from a child's lips hit Randall harder than any accusation. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes that might have been regret. But it was too late for regret. "The FBI will be here soon," Terrence said. "They'll arrest you for human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and about 50 other charges. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, assuming you survive that long. Human traffickers don't fare well in federal facilities." "What do you want from me?" Randall asked. "I want you to know that this is Emma's justice," Terrence replied. "Every charge, every consequence, every moment of suffering you'll experience, it's because you tried to murder a child, your own granddaughter. And I want you to live with that knowledge for however long you have left." Meanwhile, Danielle's confrontation with reality was reaching its climax. Unable to produce a living daughter for the social workers, faced with insurance investigators who discovered the conspiracy, and abandoned by her criminal associates, she'd been reduced to a trembling wreck of her former self. When Terrence and Emma arrived at what had once been their family home, they found Danielle sitting in Emma's room, staring at the pictures and toys of the daughter she'd helped try to murder. "She was beautiful," Danielle said without turning around. "I used to look at her sometimes and wonder how I could feel so empty when I looked at my own child." "Because you're broken inside," Emma said simply. "Good mothers don't help people hurt their children." Danielle finally turned, and the sight of Emma, alive, healthy, and clearly loved, broke something fundamental in her already fragmented psyche. "This isn't real," she whispered. "You're dead. We watched you die. You watched me almost die," Emma corrected. "But Daddy saved me, because that's what real fathers do." Terrence watched his wife and daughter face each other across an unbridgeable chasm of betrayal and blood. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, no healing. Some wounds were too deep, some betrayals too complete. "The FBI is outside," Terrence said. "They have enough evidence to convict you of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and child endangerment. You'll never see the outside of a prison cell. But first, I want you to understand something, he continued. Every choice you made, every lie you told, every plan you hatched, every moment you spent plotting Emma's death led you to this moment. You destroyed your own life because you couldn't love your own child. I did love her, Danielle protested weakly. No, Emma said with the clarity that only children possess. You love the idea of having a family, but you never loved me, and now you never will. As federal agents entered the house to arrest Danielle, Terrence felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. His enemies hadn't just been defeated. They'd been exposed for what they truly were, and their punishment would match their crimes. But the most important victory was standing beside him, holding his hand with a trust that had never wavered even in the darkest moments. Are we going home now, Daddy? Emma asked. We are home, Terrence replied. Wherever we are together, that's home. As they walked away from the house where their old life had died, neither of them looked back. Some chapters had to end completely before new ones could begin. Chapter 9, New Foundations. 6 months later, Terrence and Emma stood on the deck of their new home, a security-enhanced compound overlooking the Pacific, where the same waters that had nearly claimed their lives now served as a reminder of their survival. The legal proceedings had concluded with the ruthless efficiency of absolute evidence. Randall Golden received a life sentence for human trafficking and attempted murder, dying of a heart attack in his cell 3 months into his sentence. Zachary Winters received 25 years for conspiracy and attempted murder, while his mother was given a lighter sentence in exchange for testimony about the Nevada cover-up. Danielle received life without parole and would spend her remaining years in solitary confinement for her own protection. Child killers weren't popular in women's prison. But the legal victories were just the beginning of Terrence's reconstruction project. Golden Shipping had been dissolved, its legitimate assets distributed to the families of human trafficking victims, its criminal networks dismantled by international law enforcement. Terrence's security firm had expanded into a global operation focused on protecting vulnerable children and hunting predators who thought wealth and influence made them untouchable. Emma, now 9 years old, was thriving in ways that amazed her trauma counselors. The experience that would have destroyed many children had instead forged her into something unique. A child who understood darkness but chose light, who knew evil but embraced good, who had seen the worst of humanity but still believed in justice. Daddy, Marcel's here, Emma announced, pointing to the approaching helicopter. Their weekly security briefing had become a tradition, a way of staying connected to the larger mission that had grown from their personal tragedy. Marcel landed and approached with his usual grin, but Terrence could see the satisfaction in his eyes. Boss, we've got updates on the Jakarta operation. The Jakarta operation was one of dozens running globally. Terrence's organization now worked with international law enforcement to dismantle human trafficking networks, protect endangered children, and ensure that predators face consequences regardless of their wealth or connections. The rescue was successful, Marcel continued. 43 children recovered, network completely dismantled. The local authorities said it was the most professional operation they'd ever seen. Any connections to the old Golden Network? Terrence asked. Several. Turns out Randall's business partners thought they could continue operations after his death. They were wrong. Emma, who had been listening with the serious attention she brought to all matters of justice, nodded approvingly. Good. Children should be safe. It was a simple statement that carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. Emma had become something unprecedented, a child advocate who understood predators from personal experience, who could spot danger that adults missed, who had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged stronger rather than broken. There's something else, Marcel said, his tone shifting. We've been approached by a consortium of tech companies. They want to fund a new initiative, a global monitoring system for child protection. They're calling it the Emma Protocol. Terrence looked at his daughter, who was studying the proposal with the analytical mind she'd inherited from him. What do you think? I think, Emma said carefully, that if we can stop other families from going through what we went through, then what happened to us meant something. It was a profound statement from someone who would start 5th grade in the fall. But Emma had never been an ordinary child, and her experiences had only sharpened the intelligence that had originally made her a target. That evening, as father and daughter stood on their deck watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of gold and crimson, Terrence reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. He'd lost his faith in mercy, in second chances, in the redemptive power of forgiveness. But he'd gained something more valuable: absolute clarity about justice, unwavering protection for those who couldn't protect themselves, and a daughter who understood that strength came not from avoiding darkness, but from refusing to let it define you. "Daddy," Emma said, "do you ever miss the way things were before?" Terrence considered the question seriously. Before the yacht, he'd been a successful businessman with a seemingly happy family, living a life built on illusions of safety and trust. Now he was something else entirely. A guardian standing between predators and their prey, a father who would never again mistake civility for virtue or forgiveness for wisdom. "I miss believing that people were basically good," he admitted, "but I don't miss being naive about evil." "I'm glad we survived," Emma said simply. "I'm glad we're still together." "So am I, sweetheart. So am I." As night fell over their new life, Terrence made the same promise he'd made every evening since their resurrection from the dark waters. He would protect the innocent, pursue the guilty, and ensure that predators who thought wealth and privilege made them untouchable learned otherwise. Some wounds never healed. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. Some enemies couldn't be redeemed. But some survivors became stronger than their tormentors ever imagined possible. And some fathers would burn the world down before they let anyone hurt their children again. The story of Terrence and Emma was far from over. It was just beginning. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Left Behind. The email arrived at 10:42 p.m., just as Noah Dalton was finishing his quarterly report. His daughter Zoe's birthday was tomorrow, and he'd already wrapped her gift, a vintage camera she'd been eyeing for months. Noah smiled, imagining her face when she opened it. As chief security officer for Meridian Technologies, Noah had spent the past decade building security systems that protected everything from corporate secrets to government facilities. His reputation was built on meticulous attention to detail and an uncanny ability to anticipate threats. These same traits had helped him build a comfortable life for his family in their suburban Chicago home. The email was from Russo's, Zoe's favorite Italian restaurant. "Mr. Dalton, this is to confirm your wife's reservation for tonight at 7:30 p.m. for Party of 5. Thank you for choosing Russo's for your daughter's birthday celebration." Noah frowned. Tonight? There must be some mistake. He checked his calendar again. No dinner plans had been mentioned. He texted his wife, Melanie. "Is there a dinner at Russo's tonight I don't know about?" 20 minutes passed without a reply. Noah called home. No answer. He called Melanie's cell, straight to voicemail. Unease crept into his stomach as he gathered his things and headed home early. The house was empty when he arrived. Noah checked his phone again. Still no response from Melanie. He tried calling Zoe, but her phone went to voicemail too. Finally, he texted his mother, Patricia, who lived nearby and often joined them for family events. "Mom, is there a dinner for Zoe tonight at Russo's?" His mother's reply came quickly. It was a last-minute thing, just close family. "Melanie said you were working late and couldn't make it." Noah stared at his phone in disbelief. He hadn't been told about any dinner. His own daughter's birthday celebration, and no one had bothered to include him. He poured himself a whiskey and opened Instagram. The first post in his feed was from Melanie, posted 15 minutes earlier, a photo of everyone gathered around a table at Russo's. Zoe was blowing out candles on a tiramisu, her favorite dessert. Melanie was there, his mother Patricia, Zoe's best friend Katie, and sitting next to Zoe, with her arm around his daughter's shoulders, was Renee Durant. Noah's hand tightened around his glass. Renee was his ex-girlfriend from college, before he'd met Melanie. They dated for 3 years and had once been serious. What was she doing at his daughter's birthday dinner? The caption read, "Perfect surprise birthday for our girl. So happy Renee Durant could join us. Hashtag family time, hashtag birthday girl." Noah zoomed in on the photo. Everyone was smiling, glasses raised in a toast. They looked comfortable, like this wasn't the first time they'd all been together. His phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. "Working late again? We're just finishing up at Russo's. Zoe's having a great time." Noah didn't reply. Instead, he searched through Melanie's recent posts and found 3 more photos from the past month where Renee appeared, including one from a weekend when Melanie had told him she was visiting her sister in Milwaukee. The pieces weren't just falling into place, they were crashing down around him. Noah opened his laptop and began digging deeper. As a security expert, he knew how to find digital footprints people thought they'd erased. Within an hour, he'd recovered deleted messages between Melanie and Renee discussing their plans to gradually introduce Renee into Zoe's life. Noah's always working anyway. One message from Melanie read, "He'll never notice if we're careful." By midnight, Noah had compiled everything into a single email, which he scheduled to send to Zoe's personal email the next morning at 9 a.m., her actual birthday. The subject line read, "What they didn't want you to know about last night." Noah took another sip of whiskey, the ice long melted. In the morning, his family would learn a fundamental truth about him that they seemed to have forgotten. Noah Dalton never overlooked a betrayal. Chapter 2, Paper Trails. The clock on Noah's nightstand read 7:13 a.m. when he heard the front door open. He'd been awake for hours, lying in bed with his eyes closed, planning his next move. He listened as Melanie crept up the stairs and slipped into the guest bathroom. The shower ran for 15 minutes before she finally entered their bedroom. "Morning," she whispered, assuming he was just waking up. "Sorry I got in so late." Girls' night ran longer than expected. Noah sat up slowly. "Girls' night? That's what you're calling it now." Melanie froze, one earring halfway to her ear. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means," Noah said calmly. "How's Renee?" The color drained from Melanie's face. She was just in town and wanted to say hello to Zoe. They've always had a special connection, you know that. "No, I didn't know that. Just like I didn't know about my daughter's birthday dinner at Russo's last night." "Noah, it was last minute. Mom suggested it, and you were working late." "Stop lying," Noah said, his voice deadly quiet. "I know everything, Melanie. The girls' trips to Milwaukee, the secret meetings, the plans you've been making with Renee." Melanie sank onto the edge of the bed. "It's not what you think. It never is it?" Noah stood and pulled on his robe. "I'm taking Zoe to breakfast for her birthday. You can stay here and figure out what you're going to tell her when she checks her email." "What did you do?" Melanie's voice trembled. Noah checked his watch. "In about 90 minutes, our daughter is going to learn that her mother has been lying to both of us. That her special birthday dinner last night wasn't last minute at all. It was planned 2 weeks ago, specifically to exclude me." "Noah, please. I've already called my lawyer. I'll be staying at the Marriott starting tonight." Noah pulled a small wrapped package from his dresser drawer. "This is for Zoe. I was going to give it to her myself, but considering the circumstances, you can pass it along." Melanie started crying. "You don't understand. Renee came back because—" "I don't care why she came back," Noah cut her off. "What I care about is that my wife and mother conspired to cut me out of my daughter's life. That stops today." As Noah headed for the shower, his phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Noah, I hope you're not upset about last night. Melanie said you were busy, and you know how Zoe loves surprises." Noah took a deep breath. His mother had always favored Melanie, the daughter she never had, but this betrayal cut deeper than he'd expected. He didn't reply to the text. Instead, he sent an email to his assistant. "Cancel all meetings for the week. Family emergency." By 8:30 a.m., Noah was waiting outside Zoe's favorite breakfast spot. At 8:45, his phone buzzed again. Zoe had received his email. The screenshots of conversations between Melanie and Renee, the planning that had gone into excluding him, the lies they'd told. His daughter now had evidence of all. Zoe's car pulled into the parking lot at 8:58. She got out, her face tear-streaked but determined. When she saw Noah, she ran to him and threw her arms around his waist like she used to do when she was little. "Dad, I swear I didn't know," she sobbed. "Mom told me it was last minute and that you couldn't make it. I would never have gone if I'd known they didn't invite you." Noah held his daughter tightly. "I know, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. Why would they do this? And why is Renee suddenly everywhere? Mom said they reconnected through a mutual friend, but in your email—" "Let's talk inside," Noah said gently. "It's your birthday. Let me buy you breakfast, and I'll explain everything I know." Over Belgian waffles and coffee, Noah laid out what he'd discovered. Renee hadn't randomly reconnected with Melanie. They'd been in contact for months. Renee had moved back to Chicago 3 months ago and had been seeing Melanie regularly since then. "But why all the secrecy?" Zoe asked, pushing her food around her plate. "If they're just friends." "I don't think they're just friends, Zoe." Noah handed her his phone, showing her a screenshot he'd held back from the email. A text from Renee to Melanie. "Soon we won't have to hide anymore. I've waited 20 years to have you back in my life. I'm not going to lose you again." Zoe's eyes widened. "Mom and Renee? But that doesn't make any sense." "Mom's not. People aren't always who we think they are," Noah said quietly. "Your mother and I got together right after I broke up with Renee in college. I never knew they had any connection before yesterday." As they finished breakfast, Noah's phone exploded with notifications. Melanie had called 17 times. Patricia had left 5 voicemails. Even Renee had texted, "Noah, we need to talk. This isn't what you think." Noah silenced his phone and focused on his daughter. "What do you want to do now, birthday girl? The day is yours." Zoe wiped her eyes. "I want to go home and pack a bag. Can I stay with you at the hotel? I can't face Mom right now." "Of course," Noah said, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure this out together." What Noah didn't tell Zoe was that he'd already begun laying the groundwork for what came next. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was systematic, calculated, and cruel. And Noah Dalton wasn't a man who forgave betrayal. Not ever. Chapter 3. Deeper Deceptions. The Marriott suite felt impersonal, but Noah had made it as comfortable as possible for Zoe. 3 days had passed since her birthday, and the truth was still unfolding in painful layers. Melanie had finally stopped calling and had resorted to emails, long, desperate attempts to explain. Noah had read each one carefully, saving them to a folder labeled Evidence. The story she told was complicated. She and Renee had been together in high school, before Noah had ever met either of them. When Renee left for college across the country, they'd broken up. Melanie had met Noah 2 years later, never mentioning her past with Renee. According to Melanie, running into Renee again after 20 years had awakened old feelings, but she claimed she hadn't acted on them. They were just reconnecting as friends. The birthday dinner exclusion was Renee's idea, a chance to surprise Zoe with her presence without the awkwardness of Noah being there. Absolute bullshit, Noah muttered as he closed the latest email. His own investigation told a different story. Noah's background in security meant he had contacts in digital forensics. A former colleague had helped him recover deleted messages from Melanie's cloud backup, messages that painted a far more damning picture. Melanie and Renee hadn't run into each other by chance. Renee had tracked Melanie down deliberately, and their relationship had become physical almost immediately. Even worse, Noah discovered that his mother had known about their past all along. Patricia had never approved of Noah dating Renee in college, calling her too ambitious and not family-oriented enough. When Noah had brought Melanie home a year later, Patricia had welcomed her with open arms, never mentioning that she'd already known Melanie as her daughter's high school girlfriend. A knock at the door interrupted Noah's thoughts. Zoe entered with 2 cups of coffee from the lobby cafe. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, handing him a cup. "Mom's been texting me nonstop. She wants to meet, just her and me." Noah took a sip of coffee. "What do you want to do?" "I think I should hear her out," Zoe said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "But I don't trust her anymore." "That's a terrible thing to say about your own mother, isn't it?" Trust is earned, Noah replied. And once broken, it's nearly impossible to restore. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Zoe nodded, tears welling in her eyes. There's something else. I found old photos on Grandma's Facebook page from before I was born. There's one of Mom at her high school graduation, and Renee is standing right next to her. They look close, really close. Mom's been lying about when they met. I know, Noah said gently. I found those too. Were you going to tell me? When the time was right. You've had enough shocks for 1 week. Zoe wiped her eyes. I feel like my whole life has been a lie. Was Mom ever even happy with you? With us? Noah pulled his daughter into a hug. I believe she was Zoe. But people change, or maybe they don't change enough. Your mother and I had good years together. You're proof of that. What Noah didn't say was that he'd uncovered something far more disturbing in his investigation. A draft email in Melanie's account to a lawyer, outlining her desire to file for divorce and seek full custody of Zoe when she turned 16, which would have been 2 years ago. The email was dated 5 years earlier, indicating Melanie had been planning her exit long before Renee's reappearance. For reasons Noah couldn't determine, Melanie had never sent the email or filed for divorce. But the document existed, saved in her drafts folder, updated periodically over the years. The most recent edit was 6 months ago, around the time Renee had returned to Chicago. Noah's phone buzzed with a text from his lawyer. Discovery complete. You're not going to like what we found. Meeting tomorrow at 10? Dad, Zoe's voice pulled him back to the present. Do you think you and Mom can ever work this out? Noah looked at his daughter, so hopeful, so desperate to believe her family could be saved. But Noah knew better. Some betrayals ran too deep, persisted too long, involved too many conspirators. This wasn't just about Melanie and Renee. It was about 20 years of lies, manipulations, and hidden agendas. I don't think so, sweetheart, he said honestly. But that doesn't mean you won't have a family. It'll just look different than it did before. As Zoe headed to the bathroom to shower, Noah opened his laptop and typed a new email to his lawyer. Tomorrow works. Also, I need everything you can find on Renee Durant's financial situation for the past 5 years. Focus on real estate transactions and business ventures. Something doesn't add up. Noah had built his career on identifying security vulnerabilities, finding the weak points in seemingly impenetrable systems. Now he was applying those same skills to dismantling the elaborate deception his family had constructed around him. And like any good security expert, he wouldn't stop until he'd exposed every flaw, every backdoor, every hidden threat. The betrayal had started with a birthday dinner, but Noah was beginning to suspect it went much, much deeper than that. Chapter 4. Following the money. The conference room at Wilson & Associates had the sterile, expensive feel of all high-end law firms. Noah sat across from Daniel Wilson, his attorney for the past decade, as stacks of documents and financial reports covered the mahogany table between them. It's worse than we thought, Daniel said, sliding a folder toward Noah. Melanie has been systematically moving money for years. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger any alarms, but consistent. She's built up a separate fund of nearly $300,000. Noah flipped through the pages. The transfers had started 8 years ago, regular withdrawals of $500 to $1,000, always deposited into an account Noah had never known existed. Can she do this legally? Noah asked. It's a gray area, Dana replied. You're in a community property state, so technically, half of all marital assets belong to each of you. But the secretive nature of these transfers, combined with the evidence of her long-term exit strategy, could potentially be seen as financial infidelity by the courts. Noah nodded, moving to the next folder. And Renee? What did you find there? Daniel's expression turned grim. That's where things get interesting. Renee Durant returned to Chicago specifically to open a new branch of her design firm. The primary investor? Archer Development Corporation. My mother's company, Noah said quietly. Exactly. Patricia Dalton, through Archer Development, provided $1.2 million in startup capital to Renee 6 months ago. The paperwork lists it as a business investment, but the terms are unusually favorable to Renee. Noah leaned back in his chair, the pieces falling into place. So my mother funded my ex-girlfriend's return to Chicago, knowing full well about her history with my wife. And neither of them thought I deserved to know. There's more, Daniel continued. The location Renee leased for her business is owned by a shell company that traces back to Melanie. She bought the building 3 years ago through a separate LLC. The rent Renee is paying goes directly to Melanie, not to your joint accounts. Noah closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the magnitude of the deception. When he opened them, his expression was resolved. What do we do now? Daniel laid out the options. They could file for divorce immediately, using the evidence of financial deception and infidelity. They could confront Melanie, Patricia, and Renee with what they discovered. Or they could continue gathering evidence while Noah positioned himself more advantageously. If it were me, Daniel advised, I'd go with option 3. The more prepared you are, the better position you'll be in when this becomes public. And Noah, there's something else you should know. Daniel pushed a final folder across the table. Inside was a deed to a lakeside property in Michigan, a 3-bedroom cottage on Lake Michigan that Noah had never seen before. The property had been purchased in Melanie's name 5 years earlier, using funds from her secret account. The deed listed 2 owners, Melanie Dalton and Renee Durant. They've owned property together for 5 years, Noah said, his voice dangerously calm. This isn't a recent reconnection. This has been going on for years. Appears that way, Daniel agreed. And I bet my license that your mother knew about it too. Noah gathered the documents and stood up. I need to adjust my strategy. This isn't just about divorce anymore. I want them to feel exactly what they've done to me. Noah, Daniel warned, I understand you're angry, but this isn't anger, Daniel. This is clarity. Noah tucked the files into his briefcase. For years, the 3 women I trusted most have been plotting behind my back, stealing my money, lying to my face, and manipulating my daughter. I'm not just going to walk away. I'm going to dismantle everything they've built on these lies. That evening, Noah met Zoe for dinner at a quiet restaurant far from the usual haunts. She looked tired. The past week had taken its toll. I talked to Mom today, she said, picking at her salad. She admitted that she and Renee knew each other in high school, but she denies they've been, together since then. She says they only reconnected recently. Do you believe her? Noah asked gently. Zoe shook her head. Not really. There were too many pauses, too many careful words. And when I asked about Grandma's involvement, Mom got defensive right away. Said I was making connections that weren't there. Noah decided it was time for partial honesty. Zoe, I've discovered some financial irregularities. Your mother has been setting aside money for years. Money from our joint accounts that she never told me about. Why would she do that? People usually hide money when they're planning to leave, Noah said carefully. I think your mother has been considering divorce for a long time. Tears welled in Zoe's eyes. Then why stay? Why pretend everything was fine? Noah had been asking himself the same question. The answer, he suspected, had to do with Archer Development's complicated tax situation 5 years ago, a situation that had been resolved largely thanks to Noah's connections. Patricia had needed him then. Once that crisis passed, the plans to exclude him had accelerated. Sometimes people stay for practical reasons, Noah said, reaching across the table to squeeze his daughter's hand. It doesn't mean the good times weren't real. Zoe wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now, Noah said, we protect ourselves. I need you to promise me something, Zoe. Don't tell your mother or grandmother what we've discussed. Let them think you're still processing everything, still unsure what to believe. Can you do that? Zoe nodded slowly. You're planning something, aren't you? Noah thought about the lakeside property, the secret accounts, the years of deception orchestrated by the women who claimed to love him. I'm planning to make sure we both come out of this with what we deserve. Nothing more, nothing less. As they finished dinner, Noah's phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Please, Noah. Renee. Noah showed the message to Zoe. What do you think? Should I hear what she has to say? Zoe's eyes hardened in a way that reminded Noah of himself. Absolutely. Get her side of the story. Just don't believe a word of it. Noah smiled for the first time in days. His daughter was stronger than he'd given her credit for. She would survive this. They both would. And when the dust settled, Melanie, Patricia, and Renee would understand exactly who they had chosen to betray. Chapter 5. The Lake House. The drive to Lake Michigan took just over 2 hours. Noah had told no one where he was going. Not Zoe, not his lawyer, certainly not Melanie or his mother. The only person who knew his destination was Renee herself, who had texted him the address after he'd agreed to meet. The Lake House. Saturday, 2 p.m. Come alone. I'll be there by myself. Noah had no intention of coming alone. In the passenger seat sat Calvin Russo, a private investigator he'd worked with on corporate cases and a friend he trusted implicitly. In the back seat was a small duffel containing recording equipment, cameras, and a laptop. Run through the plan again, Noah said as they neared the lake. Calvin nodded. I'll set up the equipment while you keep her talking. Michigan is a one-party consent state, so the recordings will be admissible if needed. Focus on getting her to confirm the timeline. When they reconnected, when your mother got involved, when the romantic relationship with Melanie resumed. Don't make accusations. Just let her talk. The lake house appeared around a bend in the road. A modern A-frame with large windows overlooking the water. It was more impressive than Noah had expected, easily worth over $1 million in today's market. His jaw tightened at the thought of how long this property had existed without his knowledge. That's a hell of a secret to keep, Calvin murmured. You sure you're ready for this? Noah parked down the road, out of sight from the house. I've been ready since I saw that birthday dinner photo. Wait 15 minutes, then come in through the back like we discussed. As Noah approached the front door, he took a deep breath and centered himself. The key to getting information was to appear vulnerable, maybe even slightly desperate. Renee had always responded to vulnerability. It was what had drawn her to him in college, before she'd decided his ambition outweighed his sensitivity. The door opened before he could knock. Renee stood there, unchanged in the essentials despite the 20 years since he'd last seen her. Her dark hair was shorter now, styled in an elegant bob that framed her face. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, but Noah recognized the cashmere blend, expensive like everything else about her new life. Noah, she said softly, thank you for coming. He followed her inside, taking in the tasteful decor, minimal but luxurious. Through the large windows, Lake Michigan stretched out like a private ocean. Beautiful place, he said. You've done well for yourself. Renee gestured toward the sofa. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Something stronger. Just answers, Noah replied, remaining standing. Starting with how long you and Melanie have owned this place together. Renee's composure slipped for just a moment. She told you about the house. No one told me anything. I found out on my own, like I've had to do with everything else in my marriage, apparently. Renee sank onto the sofa. It's not what you think, Noah. Yes, Melanie and I have history, but... Stop, Noah interrupted, finally sitting across from her. I'm not here for more lies. I know you and Melanie were together in high school. I know my mother knew about your relationship back then. What I don't know is when you all decided I was the expendable one in this equation. Renee looked genuinely pained. That's not how it happened. Please, let me explain from the beginning. For the next 40 minutes, Noah listened as Renee unfolded a story 2 decades in the making. She and Melanie had been high school sweethearts, deeply in love, but afraid to be public in their conservative community. When Renee left for college in California, the distance and pressure from Melanie's family, particularly her religious father, had ended things. I moved on, Renee said. Had other relationships, built my career. When I met you in college, I had no idea you were from the same town as Melanie. Her last name was different then. She was Melanie Webb before her first marriage. First marriage? Noah interrupted. What are you talking about? Melanie was never married before me. Renee's eyes widened slightly. She never told you? She was married briefly at 19 to a local boy her father approved of. It lasted less than a year. Noah absorbed this new deception, adding it to the growing list. Continue. According to Renee, she'd recognized Melanie's name when Noah first mentioned his new girlfriend, but had convinced herself it was a coincidence. It wasn't until Noah brought Melanie to a department party that Renee confirmed it was the same person. We agreed not to tell you about our past, Renee admitted. It seemed unnecessary ancient history. And you were so happy, so in love with her. So you just happened to date me after dating my future wife, and neither of you thought that was worth mentioning. Noah's voice was ice. It was wrong, Renee acknowledged. But at the time, it seemed like the kindest choice. The story continued. Renee and Noah broke up for reasons unrelated to Melanie. Noah and Melanie got married. Renee moved to New York, then London, building her design firm. Years passed without contact. 5 years ago, I returned to the States for my father's funeral, Renee explained. Melanie was there. We talked for hours after the service. She told me she wasn't happy, that she felt trapped. We exchanged numbers, started talking again as friends. In the lake house, Noah prompted. Renee hesitated. That was a complicated decision. Melanie had inherited money from her grandmother. She wanted to invest it somewhere Noah, couldn't touch it. I was looking for property in Michigan for weekend retreats for my team. It made sense to go in together. As business partners, Noah said flatly. At first, yes. But over time, our feelings resurfaced. Nothing physical happened until earlier this year, I swear, when Patricia offered to fund my Chicago expansion. Wait, Noah interrupted. My mother approached you about expanding to Chicago? Renee nodded. She knew about the lake house. Melanie had told her. She suggested Chicago would be a good market for my business, offered the investment capital. I had no idea she was manipulating all of us. Noah finished. The back door opened quietly, and Calvin slipped inside, giving Noah a subtle thumbs up to indicate the recording equipment was in place. Who's that? Renee stood up, alarmed. A friend, Noah said calmly. I thought it was only fair to bring someone, since I doubt you're really alone here. On cue, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Renee's face flushed. Noah, I can explain. No need, he said, standing. I think we're done here. I have what I came for. As Noah headed for the door, Renee caught his arm. What are you going to do? Noah looked down at her hand until she removed it. Something I should have done years ago. See clearly. Tell Melanie I'll be filing divorce papers on Monday. And tell my mother her investment in your Chicago venture just became extremely high risk. Outside, Noah took a deep breath of cold lake air, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. Calvin joined him a minute later, equipment bag in hand. We got it all, Calvin confirmed, including whoever was upstairs getting everything on video from their end. Noah nodded. Good. I need copies of everything by tonight. As they walked back to the car, Noah glanced back at the lake house one last time. Through an upstairs window, he caught a glimpse of a figure watching him. Not Melanie as he'd expected, but his mother, Patricia. The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't just about Melanie returning to an old flame or Renee reclaiming lost love. This was about Patricia orchestrating the perfect exit for the daughter-in-law she'd always preferred to her own son. Change of plans, Noah told Calvin as they got in the car. I need you to dig into my mother's finances going back 20 years. Every transaction, every investment, every piece of property. There's something bigger happening here, and I'm going to find it. Calvin raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to go down that road? Family finances can get ugly. Noah started the car, his resolve hardening into something unbreakable. They stopped being family the moment they excluded me from that birthday dinner. Now, they're just opponents who don't realize the game has already started. As they drove away from the lake house, Noah's phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. Where are you? We need to talk before this goes any further. Noah didn't reply. The time for talking was over. Now it was time for action. Chapter 6, Secrets and Lies. The law offices of Wilson and Associates hummed with activity on Monday morning as Noah sat with Daniel and their expanded legal team. The conference table was covered with documents, financial records, property deeds, incorporation papers, and transcripts from Noah's meeting with Renee at the lake house. The recording is damning, Daniel said, sliding his legal pad toward Noah. Renee admits to the long-term deception, the property co-ownership with Melanie, and your mother's involvement in orchestrating her return to Chicago. Combined with the financial evidence, we have more than enough for the divorce proceedings. Noah nodded, reviewing Daniel's notes. And my mother's finances? The newest member of the team, a forensic accountant named Lydia Park, pulled up a spreadsheet on her tablet. Patricia Dalton's financial history shows a pattern of unusual decisions, particularly regarding Archer Development. The company has been structurally designed to minimize your involvement despite your significant contributions to its growth. Meaning that while you were saving the company from tax problems 5 years ago and bringing in major security contracts through your connections, Patricia was quietly restructuring ownership to dilute your potential inheritance. Lydia scrolled through several documents. She's been transferring shares to a trust, the beneficiaries of which include Melanie and, surprisingly, Renee Durant. Noah's jaw tightened. My mother put my ex-girlfriend in her will before we even broke up. The initial trust creation dates back 22 years, Lydia confirmed. Renee was added as a beneficiary 20 years ago, right around the time you started dating her in college. The percentage allocated to her has increased over time, with significant adjustments made 5 years ago and again 6 months ago. The room fell silent as Noah processed this information. 20 years of manipulation, with his mother at the center of it all. Patricia hadn't just known about Melanie and Renee's past. She'd been actively working to bring them back together for decades. So let me get this straight, Noah said finally. My mother knew Melanie in high school as Renee's girlfriend. For some reason, she decided Melanie was the one who should be with me instead. She introduces us after my breakup with Renee, encourages our relationship, watches us get married and have Zoe. Then, 5 years ago, she decides to reverse course and bring Renee back into the picture, funding her return to Chicago and facilitating her reunion with Melanie. That appears to be the case, Daniel confirmed. The question is why the change in strategy. Noah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Because 5 years ago, I saved Archer Development from collapse. My mother needed my security expertise and connections to keep her company afloat during that IRS investigation. Once that crisis passed, I became expendable again. That's cold, even for family business, Lydia commented. Patricia Dalton has always played the long game, Noah said, turning back to the room. What I still don't understand is why Melanie would go along with it. She had to know this would explode eventually. Daniel cleared his throat. About that, the investigator found something else you should see. He pulled up an email on his laptop and turned it toward Noah. This was sent from Patricia to Melanie 3 months ago, right around when Renee moved to Chicago. The email was brief but devastating. Everything is in place. Noah will never find out about Zoe unless we tell him. The final test results confirmed what we suspected. Once Renee is established here, we can move forward with our original plan. Noah read the message twice, his blood running cold. What does she mean? Noah will never find out about Zoe. The room grew uncomfortable as the lawyers exchanged glances. Finally, Daniel spoke. Noah, we think, based on this email and other communications we've intercepted, that there may be questions about Zoe's paternity. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's not possible. Zoe is my daughter. She looks like me. She thinks like me. And we should confirm that with testing, Daniel said gently. But the timing is suspicious. Melanie became pregnant shortly after you two started dating, which was right after she reconnected with her father at his retirement party, a party that Renee also attended, according to social media posts from that time. Noah sank back into his chair, his mind racing. Could Zoe not be his biological daughter? Was that the secret Patricia had been holding over Melanie all these years? The leverage that had kept her in a marriage she'd been planning to leave? I need to know, Noah said firmly. Arrange the testing immediately. But this doesn't change anything about my relationship with Zoe. She's my daughter, regardless of biology. Daniel nodded. Of course. In the meantime, how do you want to proceed with the divorce and the other issues? Noah's expression hardened. We move forward as planned. File the divorce papers today. Include everything we've discovered about the financial deception, the property ownership, all of it. But keep the paternity question private for now. Zoe has been through enough. As the meeting concluded, Noah's phone lit up with a text from Zoe. Grandma wants me to come stay with her for a few days. Says she can explain everything. Should I go? Noah considered his options. Letting Zoe go to Patricia's would be risky. His mother was a master manipulator. but it might also be an opportunity to learn what story they were planning to tell. Your choice, sweetheart, he texted back. Whatever you decide. Remember what we discussed about keeping our conversations private. Zoe's reply came quickly. I'll go. Maybe I can find out what they're hiding. Love you, Dad. Noah smiled despite everything. His daughter was sharp, resilient, and fiercely loyal, all qualities he'd helped nurture in her. Whether she was biologically his or not, they were connected in ways that mattered more than DNA. As Noah left the law office, his phone rang with a call from Melanie. After a week of avoiding her, he decided it was time to hear what she had to say. Noah, Melanie's voice was strained. Please tell me you haven't filed yet. We need to talk first. There's nothing left to talk about, Noah replied calmly. I know about the lake house. I know about your history with Renee. I know my mother has been pulling strings for decades. What I don't know is why you went along with it. Melanie was silent for a moment. It's complicated, Noah. More complicated than you can imagine. Patricia has leverage over both me and Renee. What kind of leverage justifies 20 years of lies? The kind that could destroy lives? Melanie whispered, including Zoe's. Please, meet me tonight. Let me explain in person. Noah thought about the paternity question hanging over his head. Fine. The Meridian Hotel Bar, 8 p.m. Public place, no scenes. Thank you, Melanie said, relief evident in her voice. I'll be there. As Noah hung up, he wondered what version of the truth Melanie would offer tonight. Would she confess to the paternity deception? Reveal what hold Patricia had over her and Renee? Whatever she said, Noah knew one thing for certain. The women who had conspired against him were finally starting to realize they'd underestimated him badly. The game they'd been playing for years was reaching its endgame, and Noah Dalton never lost when the stakes were this high. Chapter 7. The Truth Revealed. The Meridian Hotel Bar offered the perfect blend of privacy and public scrutiny. Noah arrived 30 minutes early, selecting a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. He ordered sparkling water and waited, reviewing the day's developments on his tablet. The divorce papers had been filed that afternoon. Daniel had message confirmation and noted that Melanie would be officially served tomorrow morning. The paternity test was scheduled for Wednesday, a simple cheek swab that would answer the question that had been haunting Noah since the meeting. At precisely 8 p.m., Melanie walked in. She wore a simple black dress and minimal makeup, her expression somber as she spotted Noah and made her way to his table. Noah noticed her hands trembling slightly as she sat down. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly. Noah nodded to the waiter, who brought Melanie's usual gin and tonic without being asked. You said you had explanations. I'm listening. Melanie took a deep breath. First, you should know that I did love you, Noah. Our marriage wasn't a complete lie. There were good years, real ones. Start at the beginning, Noah said, unmoved by her sentiment. How did you and my mother arrange all this? Melanie's eyes widened. Is that what you think? That I conspired with Patricia from the start? Noah, your mother is the reason for all of this. Explain. The story Melanie told was both simpler and more twisted than Noah had imagined. She and Renee had indeed been high school sweethearts, but their relationship had been discovered by Melanie's strictly religious father. In a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, the scandal had been devastating. Patricia was on the church board with my father, Melanie explained. She offered to help by sending me to a conversion therapy program she funded. My father agreed immediately. Noah's grip tightened on his water glass. My mother funded conversion therapy? That doesn't sound like her. Your mother has always cared about appearances above all else, Melanie said bitterly. The program was brutal. 3 months of psychological torture disguised as healing. When I got out, I was a mess. I married the first boy who asked me, just to prove to everyone I was fixed. Your first husband, Noah said. Another detail you never shared. The marriage lasted 8 months. By then, Renee was at college in California, and I was alone. That's when Patricia approached me again, not to send me back to the program, but to offer me a job at her company. A fresh start. Noah began to see the pattern forming. And that's where you were working when we met. Melanie nodded. Patricia introduced us at the company Christmas party. I had no idea you were her son until that night. And I definitely didn't know you were dating Renee at college. But you recognized her name when I mentioned her. Yes, Melanie admitted. And I should have said something then, but I was terrified. Patricia made it very clear that if I ever mentioned my past lifestyle or my connection to Renee, she would make sure everyone knew about the conversion therapy, the failed marriage, all of it. My family would have disowned me completely. Noah processed this information, trying to separate truth from manipulation. So you married me without telling me any of this. Had Zoe. Build a life on lies. Tears formed in Melanie's eyes. I did love you, Noah. That part wasn't a lie. But yes, the foundation was built on secrets I was too afraid to share. And 5 years ago, what changed? Melanie looked down at her untouched drink. Patricia found out I'd been in contact with Renee again. After her father's funeral, we'd started talking occasionally, just as friends. Patricia threatened to tell you everything unless I agreed to her plan. Which was, she wanted me to eventually leave you for Renee. She'd been planning it for years, setting up the trust, changing her will, creating conditions where you would be completely cut out of the Dalton legacy. Noah laughed humorlessly. Why? What did I ever do to make my own mother hate me this much? Melanie finally met his eyes. You look like him, talk like him, think like him. Every day, you reminded her of your father. The pieces clicked into place. Noah's father had left when he was 10, abandoning the family for a new life in Europe. Patricia never spoke of him, had removed every photograph from their home. Noah had always assumed it was from the pain of betrayal, but now he wondered if there was more to the story. My father, Noah said slowly. What does he have to do with this? Everything, Melanie whispered. He's the reason Patricia is obsessed with controlling everyone's lives. He left her for another man, Noah. Her entire crusade against same-sex relationships stems from that betrayal. When she discovered Renee and me in high school, it triggered something in her, a chance to fix what she couldn't fix in her own marriage. Noah sat back, stunned. His father's abandonment had shaped his entire childhood, but he'd never known the true reason. And Zoe? That email mentioned something about me, never finding out about her. Melanie's face paled. You've seen the emails. Then you know Patricia has been blackmailing me about Zoe for years. Is she mine? Noah asked directly, his heart pounding. Biologically, Melanie looked pained. I don't know for certain. There was an incident at a party right before you, and I got serious. I'd gone back home for my father's retirement. Renee was there. We both got drunk. It was just one night, and then I was with you. When I found out I was pregnant, I truly didn't know. And my mother figured it out. Melanie nodded. She arranged a secret DNA test when Zoe was a baby, took a strand of her hair and something of yours. She never told me the results, just held it over me as insurance that I would never leave. Until Renee came back, and suddenly Patricia's plan changed. She wanted me to leave you for Renee, to complete her twisted narrative about history repeating itself. Noah's mind raced, connecting dots across 2 decades of manipulation. The birthday dinner, excluding me, was a test, seeing if you and Renee could maintain the deception, if Zoe would accept Renee in her life. Yes, Melanie admitted. It was Patricia's idea. I never wanted to hurt you, Noah. I've been trapped in your mother's web for 20 years, too afraid to break free. As Melanie's story unfolded, Noah found himself torn between skepticism and a reluctant belief. The pattern of manipulation matched what he knew of his mother, the need for control, the obsession with appearances, the long-term planning. But Melanie was hardly an innocent victim. She'd made choices at every step, choices that prioritized her security over his right to the truth. I filed for divorce today, Noah said finally. You'll be served tomorrow. Melanie nodded, tears falling freely now. I expected that. I won't contest it, Noah. You deserve better than what I've given you. And Zoe, she should be with you, Melanie said. Whether she's biologically yours or not, you're a father in every way that matters. Patricia will try to use the paternity question to hurt you both, but I won't let her anymore. I'm done being her puppet. Noah studied Melanie's face, searching for deception. Why tell me all this now? Why not years ago? Because I was a coward, Melanie admitted. And because Patricia still has the power to destroy people. She's threatening Renee's business, my reputation, even Zoe's future. But seeing what this has done to you, what I've done to you, I can't continue. Whatever happens next, you deserve to know the truth. As they parted ways outside the hotel, Noah was struck by the realization that for the first time in their marriage, Melanie might actually be telling him the truth. The question was, what would he do with it? His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe at Grandma's. Something weird is happening. She keeps taking calls in private and looking worried. Also, Renee is here. They don't know I can hear them talking. We'll update when I learn more. Noah texted back a brief acknowledgement, then called Daniel. We need to accelerate our timeline, he said without preamble. My mother knows something's happening. We need to secure the evidence before she can destroy it. I'll file the emergency motions first thing tomorrow, Daniel promised. What about the paternity issue? Noah thought about Zoe, her intelligence, her loyalty, her strength. I'm still doing the test on Wednesday, but it doesn't change anything. Zoe is my daughter, and I'm going to make sure Patricia never gets the chance to use that against either of us again. As Noah drove back to his hotel, he felt a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The women who had conspired to control his life had underestimated him at every turn. They'd assumed his devotion to his family made him blind, his trust made him weak. They were about to learn just how wrong they'd been. The reckoning was coming, and Noah Dalton would be the one controlling the narrative from now on. Chapter 8. Checkmate. The next 48 hours unfolded with the precision of a military operation. Noah had spent his career identifying vulnerabilities in systems, and now he was exploiting every weakness in the elaborate deception his mother had constructed. By Tuesday afternoon, the emergency court orders had been granted. Financial accounts were frozen, including Patricia's personal accounts and the questionable trust she'd established. Melanie had been served with divorce papers, which she'd accepted without protest. Most critically, Noah had secured a temporary restraining order preventing Patricia from making any changes to Archer Development's structure or assets. She's panicking, Calvin reported, showing Noah surveillance photos of Patricia entering and exiting her attorney's office twice in one day. Our sources say she's trying to liquidate assets, but the freeze caught her by surprise. She can't touch anything significant without court approval now. Noah nodded, reviewing the latest updates on his tablet. And Renee, clearing out of her Chicago office, told her staff she's dealing with a family emergency and may be relocating the business. Looks like she's preparing to cut and run. Not before we get what we need from her, Noah said, sending a quick text to Daniel to accelerate their deposition request. Wednesday morning brought the paternity test, a simple clinical procedure that took less than 5 minutes. Noah had explained everything to Zoe the night before, assuring her that regardless of the results, nothing would change between them. You're my dad, she'd said firmly. A DNA test can't change 20 years of you being there for me. Noah had hugged her tighter than usual, amazed at her resilience. The results won't be back for a few days. Until then, keep playing along with your grandmother. The more she thinks she's in control, the better position we'll be in. By Wednesday afternoon, Noah's plan had advanced to its next phase. Using the evidence gathered from the lake house recording and financial investigations, Daniel had secured a meeting with Patricia's attorneys, ostensibly to discuss settlement terms for the divorce. Noah insisted on attending, knowing his presence would throw his mother off balance. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. at Patricia's lawyer's offices, an old-school firm that had represented Archer Development for decades. When Noah walked in, flanked by Daniel and 2 forensic accountants, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Patricia sat at the head of the conference table, her posture rigid, her face a mask of cold fury. Her 3 attorneys looked nervous, papers spread before them in disarray. Noah, Patricia said coldly, I didn't expect you to attend. These matters are usually handled by counsel. I wouldn't miss it, Mother, Noah replied, taking a seat directly across from her. After all, we're discussing the dismantling of a 20-year conspiracy. I thought the architect should be present. Patricia's eyes narrowed. I don't know what Melanie has told you, but let's not waste time with denials. Noah interrupted. We have emails, the financial records, the recordings from the lake house. We know everything. The conversion therapy program you funded, the blackmail, the paternity questions, all of it. The color drained from Patricia's face. Whatever you think you know. Daniel placed a thick folder on the table. Mrs. Dalton, we've filed motions to investigate Archer Development for fraud, misappropriation of funds, and tax evasion. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given the evidence we've compiled, the court will likely appoint a receiver to take control of the company, pending the outcome. Patricia's lead attorney leaned toward her, whispering urgently. She waved him away. This is absurd. You can't possibly have grounds for such accusations. Actually, we do, Noah said calmly. 5 years ago, when I helped you solve the IRS problems, I documented everything, including the questionable accounting practices you insisted on maintaining. I kept copies of everything, expecting I might need them someday. Turns out I was right. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. You would destroy your family's company out of spite? Family, Noah laughed. You've spent 20 years trying to erase me from the Dalton legacy. You manipulated my wife, lied about my daughter, and funded the return of my ex-girlfriend to ensure I would be humiliated and excluded. You don't get to claim family loyalty now. For the next hour, Daniel methodically outlined their terms. Patricia would resign as CEO of Archer Development, transferring control to a board-approved successor. She would dissolve the trust benefiting Melanie and Renee, and acknowledge Noah as the rightful heir to the Dalton estate. Most importantly, she would sign a legally binding statement confirming that any paternity questions regarding Zoe had been definitively answered. Noah was her father, biologically and legally. And if I refuse? Patricia asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Noah leaned forward. Then on Monday, I'll provide evidence to federal prosecutors showing how you misappropriated company funds to finance your personal vendetta, including the conversion therapy program you secretly funded. By Monday evening, your name will be associated with financial fraud and psychological torture of LGBTQ plus youth. Your carefully constructed reputation will be in tatters. Patricia stared at her son, searching for weakness. Finding none, she turned to her attorneys. Give us the room. I need to speak with Noah alone. When everyone had filed out, Patricia's mask finally dropped. You have no idea what you're doing. The things I've protected you from. What? Noah challenged. The truth about Dad? That he left you for a man? I've known for years, Mother. I hired investigators a decade ago to find him. Patricia froze. You found William? In Barcelona, living a quiet life with his partner of 30 years. He told me everything. How you threatened to destroy him if he ever contacted me. How you used your family's money to strip him of parental rights. Noah's voice remained steady. He wanted to be part of my life. You made that impossible. He abandoned us, Patricia hissed. He escaped you, Noah corrected. Just like I'm doing now. Just like Melanie tried to do. Just like anyone with sense would do when they realize what you really are. Patricia's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. You think Melanie is some innocent victim in all this? She made her choices, Noah. She could have told you the truth at any point. You're right. And she'll face consequences for those choices in the divorce. But you're the architect of this whole twisted plan. You saw a chance to control someone else's life the way you couldn't control Dad's, and you took it. For a moment, Patricia looked her age, the carefully maintained facade cracking to reveal the bitterness beneath. You have no idea what it was like. The humiliation, the whispers. I protected our family name. No, Noah said quietly. You protected your pride, and you used me, Melanie, and even Zoe as pawns in your private war against reality. Patricia's eyes hardened. Zoe, you still think she's yours, don't you? Even after everything you've discovered? Noah smiled coldly. That's your last card, isn't it? The DNA test results you've been holding over Melanie all these years? I had Zoe tested yesterday. We'll have results in a few days. But here's what you never understood, Mother. It doesn't matter. Zoe is my daughter. I raised her, loved her, shaped her into the amazing person she is. Biology is irrelevant. You sound just like your father, Patricia said, the words dripping with disdain. "Thank you," Noah replied sincerely. "That's the first compliment you've given me in years." He stood and walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to sign the agreement. After that, we proceed with the fraud investigation. Your choice." As Noah walked out, he felt 20 years of tension release from his shoulders. Whatever Patricia decided, he had already won the most important battle. He was free of her manipulation at last. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Grandma just called the house in a panic." "What did you do?" Noah smiled as he replied. "Just had an honest conversation with her for the first time in decades. How do you feel about visiting Barcelona this summer? There's someone I'd like you to meet." Chapter 9. The Forward Path. The paternity test results arrived on Friday morning. A simple email with an attachment that would confirm or rewrite Noah's understanding of his family. He sat alone in his hotel suite, finger hovering over the download button, suddenly uncertain if he wanted to know. His phone rang, Zoe calling. He answered immediately. "Dad, did you get the results?" Just now, Noah admitted. "I haven't opened them yet." Zoe was quiet for a moment. "Are you scared?" "A little," Noah confessed. "Not about what they'll say, but about how I'll feel when I see them in black and white." "Open it," Zoe said firmly. "Whatever it says, we'll deal with it together. Put on speaker so I can hear." Noah smiled at his daughter's strength, so like his own. He downloaded the file and opened it, scanning quickly for the conclusion. "Probability of paternity, 99.99%, he read aloud, relief washing over him. "You're biologically mine, Zoe." Her joyful whoop made him laugh. "I knew it. I told you those eye crinkles when we smile couldn't be a coincidence." "Your grandmother lied about this too," Noah said, scrolling through the detailed results. "All those years of holding this over your mother, and it was never even true." "Grandma signed the papers," Zoe informed him. "Her lawyer delivered them this morning. She's stepping down from Archer Development next week. Mom says she's planning to move to Arizona, something about a wellness retreat she owns there." Noah wasn't surprised. Patricia would never allow herself to face the social consequences of her actions in Chicago. She would reinvent herself somewhere new, crafting another carefully controlled narrative where she was the hero of her own story. "How's your mom doing?" Noah asked, surprising himself with a genuine concern in his voice. "Better, I think," Zoe said cautiously. "She's been talking more honestly since she moved out. She told me everything about her and Renee in high school, about Grandma's manipulation, all of it. She knows she messed up by not telling you the truth years ago. And Renee? Gone. Mom says she left for London yesterday. Apparently, she's selling her Chicago business and cutting ties with Grandma completely." Noah had expected as much. Renee had always been pragmatic. Once she realized Patricia's protection had evaporated, there was no reason to stay. "Dad," Zoe continued, her voice growing serious. "What happens now? With you and Mom, I mean." Noah sighed, considering his answer carefully. "The divorce will proceed. Too much has happened, too many lies told, for us to go back. But seeing the lengths your grandmother went to manipulate all of us, it helps me understand some of your mother's choices, even if I can't forgive them entirely. So you'll be civil?" "More than civil," Noah promised. "We'll be conscientious co-parents. Your mother made serious mistakes, but she was also a victim of your grandmother's schemes. I won't punish her beyond what's already happening." The relief in Zoe's voice was evident. "That's really mature, Dad." Noah laughed. "Don't sound so surprised. I can be reasonable when people are honest with me. Speaking of honest, are we really going to Barcelona this summer?" "If you want to," Noah said, smiling at her excitement. "Your grandfather would love to meet you. He's been waiting a very long time." After finishing the call with Zoe, Noah received an email from Daniel confirming that Patricia had signed all the necessary documents. The transition at Archer Development would begin next week, with Noah temporarily stepping in as acting CEO until a suitable replacement could be found. As evening fell, Noah packed up his hotel room. He'd found a comfortable condo downtown, not far from Zoe's university and close enough to the office for convenience. A fresh start in a place that held no memories of betrayal. His phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. Just heard about the test results. I'm so relieved, Noah. I know you won't believe me, but I truly didn't know. Patricia's manipulation went deeper than either of us realized. Noah considered not responding, but something compelled him to write back. I believe you. That doesn't change what happened, but it helps explain it. Take care of yourself, Melanie. As he finished packing, Noah reflected on the past 2 weeks, how quickly his entire life had unraveled and then restructured itself around the truth. The birthday dinner that had excluded him had been meant as the beginning of his humiliation. Instead, it had become the catalyst for his liberation. His phone rang one last time, an international number he recognized immediately. Noah, his father's voice came through, warm and slightly accented after decades in Spain. I just heard from your lawyer. Is it really over? Has she finally let go? It's over, Dad, Noah confirmed, feeling a weight lift from his chest as he said the words. Patricia is out of Archer development, out of my life, and soon out of Chicago entirely. And Zoe, my granddaughter. Noah smiled at the wonder in his father's voice. She's excited to meet you. She has your eyes, according to the photos you sent, and definitely your stubbornness. William Dalton laughed, a sound Noah had gone too many years without hearing. The Dalton legacy I'm actually proud to pass down. Noah, I can't tell you what this means to me. After 30 years of Patricia's walls between us. I know, Dad, Noah said quietly. I understand better than ever what she was capable of. But that's finished now. We make our own path forward. After they hung up, Noah stood at the hotel window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. In the reflection, he could see himself clearly, no longer the man who had been betrayed and excluded, but someone stronger, someone who had faced deception and emerged victorious. The birthday dinner that was meant to begin his removal from his daughter's life had instead catalyzed the dismantling of 20 years of manipulation. His mother, his wife, and Renee had all underestimated him. Assuming his trust made him blind, his love made him weak. They had forgotten a fundamental truth about Noah Dalton. He never overlooked betrayal, and he never left a threat unaddressed. The dinner invitation they had forgotten to extend had ultimately invited their own downfall. Noah picked up his bags and took one last look around the hotel room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rebuilding Archer development, strengthening his relationship with Zoe, reconnecting with his father. But for the first time in years,